My discussion this week is going to be shifting trends in discipline, and my essential question is, does ISS work? Now, for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to be talking mainly about minor discipline issues that teachers deal with on a regular basis every day in class, like tardies, like dress code, like kids talking, getting out of their seats and being disrespectful, those kinds of issues. The major issues we'll leave for another discussion. In South Carolina, we have the infamous claim of being low in education. In South Carolina, we have a joke called, you'll see bumper stickers sometimes, or people wearing t-shirts saying, "Thank God for Mississippi." And usually what they're referring to is the fact that Mississippi for a long time was ranked lower than us and was the only thing keeping us from being at the bottom out of the 50 states. Actually, recently, though, this joke is no longer valid because Mississippi has outranked us in terms of literacy, and that's according to 2018 data. So we know in South Carolina that something isn't working in our education system, that something needs to change. In 2015, in a school in South Carolina, there was an incident that occurred at Spring Valley High School, and this incident got national attention. Everybody paid attention to it, and it showed a resource officer at a high school pulling a student out of their chair. The resource officer actually flipped the chair over, landed the child on the ground, and then dragged them away. The reason I'm bringing this up is because it drew attention to this question about discipline in South Carolina. Is our discipline system, the way we have it set up, is it part of the problem with our education? Are they connected? So what is the problem here? Well, the problem is that kids aren't always going to behave well. Like, we have kids who are going to behave badly. They're going to act out, refuse to get out of their seat, all sorts of different things like this. So the problem is, how can we encourage, as teachers and administrators, positive behavior from our students and discourage negative behavior? But we want to be able to do this in a way that provides equity for all students. We want kids to feel like it's fair. And that really is everyone, okay? I'm talking about the kid who's doing right too. If you have a student who is being disrespectful, who is disrupting class, the kid who's trying to learn, we've got to make it fair for that kid too. And also for the student who is misbehaving. So what is ISS? In South Carolina, this is something that we use all the time. It's very, very common. First of all, it's a way to keep kids in school. Instead of kicking them out of school with an out-of-school suspension, you keep them in school, usually in a separate room. There's somebody supervising them, and they usually do homework, or teachers will bring work down to them. I used to walk down to ISS all the time and bring work to my kids who were sitting in ISS. So is this working? Is in-school suspension working? Well, there's been a couple different research papers that have been done. One, pretty much everyone agrees that ISS is working to remove distractions from class. So, for instance, in my experience, this was very true. If I had a student who was extremely disruptive and they left the classroom and went to ISS, that removed the distraction and I could continue with my class. So it is working in that regard. However, the research is indicating that it's not necessarily keeping kids from acting out more. It seems to be working for some kids, but not for all of the students. A lot of the kids that are in ISS are repeat offenders. In fact, one study showed that 49%, that means half of all ISS occurrences, was the same 5% of students. So it's like you've got this little group, we can call them little troublemakers or something, this little group of kids who just kept ending up in ISS. And of course, these are for minor offenses. These are not suspension or expulsion worthy offenses. They're more minor things. Other studies found similar data. Some studies showed that about 50% are usually repeat offenders, and 50% are one-time offenders. So they end up in ISS one time, and then they're done. So if we look at that data and we consider it, we have to ask the question, is it working? Is ISS working as a way to keep kids behaving correctly? And I think the answer is that for some students, it is working. You saw there 50% of the kids are one-time offenders. That means they do it one time, they end up in ISS, they don't like it, they say, I'm not going there again, and they don't do it again. So it does work for some students. But you have this whole group of kids, and I call them troublemakers in quotations because we know that there are a variety of things that might cause them to be a troublemaker. And for them, the answer is no, it's not necessarily working. There's a lot of reasons why. First of all, the fact that they're at the school building doesn't mean that they're not in school. Like they're not in the classroom, they're not receiving instruction, they're not collaborating with their peers, so they're just more disengaged. A lot of times, the reason they're making trouble in the first place is because of academic frustration. I found this to be true. Oh, I found it so many times to be true. The kid who's acting out the most is most likely the one who doesn't know how to read. And then also in this ISS room, there's no help with classwork. A lot of times it's like either a coach who's got a free period or at one point we would have substitutes at one school I worked in, just watching the ISS kids. So there's nobody helping them. There's not like a teacher who's determined to help them learn. So what is the solution? If in-school suspension isn't helping the kids who are chronic troublemakers, if they're not helping them get better, how do we solve the problem? And I think the answer is it's really hard. It's really complicated. It's not a one-size-fits-all issue. As we've noticed from other things we've watched this week, zero tolerance kind of rules is going out of fashion. Those were really popular in the 90s. They're really not working anymore. So we know that zero tolerance isn't going to work. We've got to come up with creative solutions. And I believe that it happens in the classroom, case by case, coming up with creative solutions to solve the problem. Now, one study that I did offer a solution. They called it functional behavioral assessment. And basically what this is for the teacher, instead of immediately sending the kid to ISS, this is asking the teacher to watch for motivators. What's causing the student to act out in this negative way? And it gives some options like, are they looking for attention? Are they trying to impress a boyfriend or girlfriend? Are they tired of sitting? Like, do they need to just stand up and walk around? And basically, this is the behavioral assessment is trying to help students create their own self-assessment. So where like every day they would decide for themselves, have I done good today? Have I paid attention? Or have I been talking the whole time? And it's basically a way for them to put the locus of responsibility back on the student. And there was some evidence that the functional behavior assessment did work better than ISS. On a very practical note, like in my opinion, okay, and this is just from teaching experience, I believe that classroom management in this setting comes down to teacher wisdom. It comes down to the teacher themselves in the classroom. I think that teachers, we have to switch it up. We can't let it be the same every single day. If so, the kids get bored. We can't use the exact same tool every single day. Sometimes it's just a matter of moving kids' seats. Sometimes it's a matter of standing up. I had students where I started having them stay outside a little longer at lunch. I mean, it made a huge difference because just standing outside, like having them move a little bit more, when they came back into the classroom, they were so much more ready to pay attention, to listen, because they had gotten a little bit of energy out. And I'm talking about high school students. So on a very practical note, I think it just comes down to each individual situation, using wisdom, not overusing or abusing ISS or any other disciplinary action. So here's our discussion questions this week. Do you think ISS or something similar is an effective way to enforce school discipline? Why or why not? And then what are some alternatives? What alternatives to in-school suspension might work? All right, I look forward to a really fun discussion with you guys today this week. Thank you.